Greetings, Exile. The start of 326 went really well. If we ignore the endless queue times with the multiple disconnects and the rollbacks that gave the phrase déjà vu a whole new level of trauma.
Are you fucking
Honestly,
kidding me?
I felt like I was trapped in a time loop designed by cruel gods. But aside from that chaos, the actual league start was surprisingly smooth. My character performed way better than expected. I barely died, even while antagonizing every mercenary I could find. And I managed to finish the campaign in under 9 hours. That might not sound fast to some of you, but for someone like me who usually takes over 12 hours, it felt like I had unlocked speedrunner mode. But you're not here for the ramblings of a login screen survivor. You are here to have a smooth, death-free leveling experience. So let's get into it. For Act 1, after killing Hillock, swap out your double strike gem for Frost Blades and link it to Ruthless Support. Frost Blades works with any melee weapon, so use whichever two-handed weapon gives the highest possible damage, sword, axe, or mace. Just avoid staves as they're not ideal for hit-based builds. Once you complete the Mercy mission quest, pick up Ancestral Call Support and a Quicksilver Flask from Nessa. Look for a gear piece to make a 3-link setup with 2 red and 1 green socket. This will be your main damage setup. Frost Blades linked to Ruthless and Ancestral Call Support. After finishing breaking some eggs, get War Banner and Dash as rewards from Tarkleigh. Next, complete the lab trial in the lower prison. Keep checking vendors and drops for better weapon upgrades. Once you defeat Brutus, pick up Leap Slam from Tarkleigh and link it to faster attack support, which you can buy from Nessa. This will become your main movement skill alongside Dash. When you reach the Cavern of Anger, get Infernal Blow as a reward from Nessa and swap out Frost Blades. From here, your primary setup becomes Infernal Blow linked to Ruthless and Ancestral Call Support. After defeating Mervale and finishing Act 1, your skill tree should look something like this. For Act 2, after saving Helena and completing the Intruders and Black Quest, pick up Warlord's Mark from Groost and buy Ancestral Cry from Yena. Warlord's Mark allows us to generate endurance charges by stunning marked enemies, and Ancestral Cry helps with clear by striking additional targets. Make sure to complete the lab trials in the Chamber of Sins and Crypt area. By now, you may start noticing a lower chance to hit. To fix this, head back to Nessa in Act 1 and grab Precision to improve your accuracy. For the deal with the Bandits quest, kill Oak and Creighton and side with Alira. The plus 15% all elemental resistances she grants is especially helpful during the early acts. After killing Weaver, take Rage Support as your reward from Silk and swap out Ancestral Call for it. From this point, your main damage setup becomes Infernal Blow linked to Ruthless and Rage Support. Once you defeat Val Oversoul and complete Act 2, your skill tree should look something like this, with the attack mastery for additional strike targets allocated. For Act 3, after failing to save Tolman in the crematorium, acquire Pride from Maramoa as your quest reward. Once you've killed Gravicius, purchase Boneshatter from Clarissa. If you're playing in a trade league, you can directly pick up Boneshatter of Carnage for around 1 Chaos Orb through trade. After switching to Boneshatter, make sure you're using a mace, since maces have the most stun-related nodes and masteries. Keep an eye on vendors for upgrades, or gamble for one if needed. Complete the lab trials in the crematorium, catacombs, and Imperial Gardens, and then attempt your first labyrinth in the Sarn encampment. After defeating Izaro, ascend as a champion and take the first to strike, last to fall ascendancy node. Now, set up Corrupting Fever linked with life tap support. This combo lets you hit low life to trigger adrenaline every 20 seconds. Just be careful not to trigger it too often or before the cooldown ends, or you'll end up killing yourself. After defeating Dominus and finishing Act 3, your skill tree should look something like this, with Fortify Mastery for melee hits Fortify and Mace Mastery for increased stun duration allocated. For Act 4, after defeating Vol and completing the Breaking the Seal quest, purchase Berserk from Pitaris and Vanya. Use it whenever you're at full rage and fighting a rare or unique enemy for a big damage boost. Once you've defeated both Daresso and Kaom, acquire Trauma Support or Behead Support if you're using regular Boneshatter from Diala, and purchase Brutality Support from Pitaris and Vanya. Now swap out Rage and Endurance Charge on melee stun support for these new gems. At this point, your main damage setup becomes Boneshatter linked to Trauma or Behead support, Brutality support, and Ruthless support. After defeating Malachi and completing Act 4, your skill tree should look something like this, with the Life Mastery for reduced mana cost allocated. For Act 5, there won't be any changes to your gems or gems setup in this act. After defeating Kitava, you'll permanently lose 30% of your elemental resistances. Yes, permanently. So it's time to start paying close attention to your resistances. If you don't, you'll keep getting one shot and wonder why. At the very least, aim for 40% in all resistances by the end of this act to survive comfortably. Your skill tree at this point should look something like this, with the Mana Mastery for increased reservation efficiency allocated. For Act 6, after clearing the Twilight Strand, purchase Purity of Elements from Lily Roth. This aura makes you ailment immune and gives you at least plus 20% to all resistances, helping you recover from the resistance penalty we took in the previous act. Make sure to complete the lab trial in Lower Prison during this act. After defeating the Brine King and finishing Act 6, make sure to allocate the Brine King Pantheon. It's great for avoiding chain stuns. By the end of this act, your skill tree should look something like this, with Resolute Technique allocated. This keystone means no more missing attacks, and we can finally drop precision from our setup. For Act 7, complete the lab trials in the Crypt and Chamber of Sins Level 2 to unlock the Cruel Labyrinth. After defeating Azaro in the Cruel Lab, allocate Fortitude as your second Ascendancy node. This gives us maximum Fortify stacks at all times, which is a huge defensive boost. With this, we can now swap the Fortify Mastery to the one that gives stun and block recovery per Fortify for smoother gameplay. Finally, after attending Silk's wedding and promptly murdering his beloved widow Arakali, you'll wrap up Act 7. By the end of all this, your skill tree should look something like this, with the Fortify Mastery changed, as mentioned above. For Act 8, there are no changes to your gems or gem setup in this act. Make sure to complete the lab trial found in the bathhouse. After settling the family feud between Solaris and Lunaris by murdering both sisters, you'll finish Act 8. By the end of this act, your skill tree should look something like this, with the Rage Mastery for maximum rage and Mace Mastery for Culling Strike allocated. For Act 9, once again, there are no changes to your gems or setup in this act. However, this is where I started using the Voidhome unique mace. It's a pretty controversial weapon because of its dumb downsides like reduced item rarity and reduced experience gain, but in return, it offers insanely high base attack speed. It's not mandatory, but it's the kind of weapon that can greatly boost your damage with trauma stacks and help solve mana issues. At least until you find a better unique or rare weapon for endgame. Voidhome can be equipped at level 51, but I personally held off using it until later since I didn't want to sacrifice rarity and XP too early, and my rare weapon was holding up just fine until now. Make sure to complete the lab trial found in the tunnel. After bashing the hell out of the Depraved Trinity to finish Act 9, your skill tree should look something like this, with the Banner Mastery for increased damage taken by nearby enemies allocated. For Act 10, begin by completing the lab trial in the ossuary to unlock the Merciless Labyrinth. After defeating Azaro, allocate Unstoppable Hero as your third Ascendancy. This grants 18% more armor and evasion, along with 18% increased attack speed based on your current Fortify stacks, a massive power boost for the build. Then comes the final showdown with Kitava, and you guessed it, you lose another 30% resistance. That's right again. Welcome to Endgame, where resistance penalties are a feature, not a bug. By the end of Act 10, your skill tree should look something like this, with Armor Mastery for increased armor per second and Leech Mastery for life recoup now allocated. Before jumping into maps, make sure your elemental resistances are at least 60%, though ideally capped at 75%. Chaos res can wait unless you're heading into chaos heavy encounters. Also, set up your cast when damage taken combo, Link Molten Shell to cast when damage taken, and Life Tap support for a handy layer of defense. That wraps up the leveling phase. You'll find the full POB linked in the video description below. Now, before we wrap up completely, let's quickly go over a few additional things you can do to smooth out your leveling even more. First, let's say you're struggling to find a good weapon upgrade. In that case, you can use a vendor recipe to craft a solid weapon. All you need is a blacksmith's whetstone, a rare or magic rustic sash, and any melee weapon of your choice. Vendor all three together, and you'll get a weapon with increased % physical damage, super useful for getting over gear gaps during leveling. Next, don't shy away from fighting mercenaries. Even if you don't plan to hire them, they often drop some very decent gear. And this build, in particular, shines in those encounters. Once you're on Boneshatter, they'll be stunned so often they might as well be statues. It even holds up well against those mercenaries on steroids and maps. Finally, let's talk about uniques. Outside of the usual leveling staples, there are a few standout uniques that fit this build extremely well. Kacholi, a two-handed mace that you can equip super early. It carries you quite far and also has a fun fire explosion on kill. Void Home. Yeah, it's controversial. It has dumb downsides like reduced rarity and experience gain, but the crazy attack speed and built-in mana fix make it a solid option while stacking trauma, especially until you find a proper end-game weapon. Carnage Heart. This unique amulet is incredibly helpful early on. It gives you much-needed attributes, resistances, and leech. Plus, you can equip it quite early and even use it into early maps. The Magnate, a unique studded belt that not only provides decent resistances, but also gives you a chance to deal double and even triple damage. You can equip it very early, and it stays relevant for a good chunk of progression. I'll be posting the mapping update once I've collected at least 2 watchstones. Until then, if you want to stay up to date with how the build is progressing, feel free to watch me live on Twitch or join our Discord, where I'll be happy to help you out with anything related to the build. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and bonk that notification bell to get the earliest updates. As always, thanks for watching, Exile.